Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Right here, right now, this is about you, the listeners, and my gratefulness. Yeah, so episode 53, this is the first time I'm doing a solo one. And you think about, we release an episode every 2 weeks, and last episode was 52, so that means this is over 2 years, and it's still alive. I listened to Eric Wood's podcast, and he talks about the beginning. There's 100,000 new podcasts being released every single week. There is so much content out there. And in 2019, there was about 700,000 podcasts. And the advice on podcasting even then was not to start a podcast, because most of them start up and they don't survive because they are not money-making machines. They are purpose. They are meaningful. They have to provide value, and you have to be connected to it and driven. And there are moments that I have struggled, and then all of a sudden I'll get some feedback from somebody about a guest we brought on, about a conversation that shifted something. Or I learned stuff through the podcast by interviewing people and just having real conversations about that. So yeah, 2.1 million podcasts are available to you right now, and you're listening to Mindfulness Manufacturing. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's why I really did think a lot this last week about this episode. Why did we start this? You know, I'm grateful for Mike that started this with us in the beginning, got it going, and then Dave came on, and there's been continual forks in the road of directions that we go. I mean, there's some things that are consistent. We like to keep it around 30 minutes because I know you all are so busy. We bring a variety of guests on. I do research before each episode because your time is the most valuable thing you can give, and your ears are giving time to this right now. So we better prepare, and we better deliver something that is going to make your next day better. So yeah, the social media, I struggle with it sometimes because there's just so much content out there. And at the end of the day, your experiences create your reality. You are the architect of your experiences because you make choices on what you listen to and who you talk to and what information you consume, because everything provides context to how you feel. So I want to leave you feeling inspired. I want to leave you thinking different. And if there's anything I take away from the last 2 years of having conversations on this podcast, preparing for it, talking about it after, looking at the industry, knowing that manufacturing is not the most desired industry to work in, not the most engaged. A lot of plants right now looking for general managers because they don't have people within their own organization to take that role. And one leader leaving another company for another leadership position. Okay, so there's a systematic problem, but it's not everywhere. And I get mixed up sometimes because I'll have certain conversations and people are like, well, oh yeah, of course, you want to treat your team members with respect, and they are the subject matter experts. And then on the other side, there's another organization where they're just driven by those results and those metrics. And it's like, really? Like, yes, really. And that's why, as a community, I used to be afraid sometimes to say, I want to have accountability with kindness, because I didn't always do that. And you know, the influencers that we've talked about here, the Brene Brown of clear is kind. Right? So what's wrong with saying we can be kind and accountable? When we think about how cultures are in manufacturing, and yes, we want to have a more mindful industry. Some of that is personality, but a very small percent. We're talking like 10%, because most of how we show up is skill and experiences. And if you want to change culture, you got to have different experiences, because only experiences over time will reinforce what a different culture is like. And whatever position you're in, you're going to have an influence. But at the end of the day, positions do matter. There is an org chart, and people do look at things differently with your title. So if you are the highest level person of the organization and you're not demonstrating empathy, well, guess what? You're not going to have a very empathetic, you're not going to have a very empathetic culture. Your people aren't going to be as connected as they could be. And that's a shame, because we know what connection does. We, at the end of the day, we are a people industry. So we want to continue to develop that. And it doesn't matter what your personality is, whether you're an introvert or whether you're an extrovert. What really matters is our life experiences. And every one of us, and that's our call to action today. I'm going to keep it shorter, but that's really what I want people to think about today is, what's your confirmation bias, right? So, hey, this is, we used to think of this whole thing, and I still do today, of the four walls. You know, you get inside your four walls, and this is kind of how we do it. And then we look for information to reinforce that how we're doing it is the right way. Where we really need to be more like scientists and thinking, okay, things are good, but how could they be better? Like, what is everybody else doing? And that's why when we talk about experiences, man, if you're listening to this podcast right now, I'm going back to the fact that I'm so grateful because you're open to listening to something different. And it's the same thing in your day-to-day experiences. If you want a different result, you need a different experience. That could be talking to someone outside your organization. That could be reading that book. That could be just spending time with people that are going to help you be more curious. Because we need a lot more information around what we don't know than talking about what we do know. And when we bring on different guests here, we're really trying to drive that information of like, oh, we're not going to have stuff that's totally new, but we are going to have conversations about what we don't know. And that ties into the fixed mindset to the growth mindset of like, how else could we do it? And in order for a leadership team to have that growth mindset, you have to have that whole emotional intelligence techniques, that language, what those tools. And the other thing I've learned is by doing some different coaching and training different organizations, the real magic comes in when everybody starts talking the same language. And then we get this permission to call each other out because we have the skill to do that with finesse. And if we're constantly leaning into some courage, so you can, hey, this is how you're making me feel, dude. Like you're yelling, or okay, I'm not yelling. Okay, well, you're making me feel this way. Put your opinion out there. Have some courage. And then just get curious. Like, I want to understand perspective. Like, why are you so upset about this? This is really making me curious. And then we get that collaboration to better understand where everyone's coming from. So when you can create those uncomfortable conversations. And I remember Ann Parker was a very experienced quality manager. I remember her saying to me, "You guys are too nice." I'm like, "Hey, I'm comfortable. Why are you coming in here and saying that? Oh my goodness." And that was one of the best lessons and one of the best mind shifts. I was like, I'm curious, like, why does she think we're so nice? And why is that bad? I was in this paradox and just thought that, hey, this is the way that it is. And then as you kind of increase your skills and look at different mindsets, it was great to have that different perspective. And I will say that took things to another level in positivity, because we talked more about what was happening that shouldn't be happening. what can we be more open with each other about to make each other better? And when we know that you're coming from a place of care, and I know that you care about me personally, then I can lean into the curiosity. And, okay, well, why are you feeling that way? And that's really it. I mean, the emotional intelligent teams will call out each other's behavior. If you're listening this far into the podcast, you've already expanded your mind because you're opening to listening to this. But what can you think about right now that you think is true that might not be? Like, you may think that things are going well in this area. What questions can you ask to find out, like, this is what I think to be true, but is this right? And I find that the more that we're doing that, the more we can change culture and experiences. Because it is that skill to have, like, what is the item we're not talking about? What are the things that we need to discuss that we haven't? When I listen to the guests, and I even listen to some other episodes and I reuse some of that content, the ones that have the biggest impacts are those ones that say, yeah, I tried this and this didn't work. And it's not what we know, it's what we don't know. What don't we know about our people? What are we not talking about? What could we do actually different? And not just changing the cycle time on the press or changing the speed on a robot. What are the things that as an organization that we're not tapping into? What are we not talking about? It doesn't matter whether it's manufacturing or what industry it's at. But right now, you can stop listening and go out and be curious and create new experiences, because new experiences create new feelings, and new feelings can change that engagement, because I feel safer. I feel like I can more just say what's on my mind and we can get to a different solution here. And then if we can do that, then we can change the results. I had a little bit of imposter syndrome recording a solo episode, but I know what's on my heart. I know there's a lot of mistakes that I've made with my kids in my personal life, with my parents over time. And I kind of got to keep on going back and say, okay, what can I do different, right? How can I show up a little bit different? And how is this impacting them? I'm thinking it's helping them, but is it? What are the conversations we need to have at home? What are the conversations we need to have at work? If we can open every day with curiosity, and you can enter your organization tomorrow and be that person to ask those questions, maybe create that uncomfortable situation of learning and challenge what's going on, you might just get a bit of different result. And if just the people that listen today can do that, I believe we can change this industry to be more mindful, to be more respectful. It's already a well-paid industry, and that can continue to grow because we can become more competitive just by changing some of our mindsets to growth, being open. And thank you so much. I know that we do ask about sharing the podcast, making any comments on it on Apple Podcast or however you listen to it. But that's really how we survive as far as sharing that content. So you know how to get a hold of me. It's in the notes. I'm on LinkedIn, operationskickstart.com. I'm curious, what makes this podcast better? What am I not doing? I know that we're better than with the first day. I also know that every episode we owe to you, the listener, that we get a little better each time. And if no one has given you feedback lately on how to handle a situation different, your team is not excelling in mindfulness or emotional intelligence. Because wherever there are people, there is conflict. And the difference is the level of skill on that team. And when people feel safe to call it out, then you will see people stop and they will listen in a mindful way. Thank you for everyone that showed up. Our listeners, our guests, Mike and Dave, and every person that's been supporting this movement. Have a great day. Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.